And 16.
16.
Okay. I had a request to take up, just to pull item G from the consent agenda on the changes to Title 090 regarding the public lands. Just had a couple of questions on that.
Is it okay if we take off item G? Okay. Any other changes or conflicts of interest? All right, seeing none, we will go to citizens appearing before council. These for items not on the agenda. Is it on the agenda?
No.
Okay, come on up. You have 3 minutes, name, and if you would step over to the podium and speak into the microphone. Give me your name and if you're live in city limits or not.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you tonight. My name is Katie Bjorn. I have a building in Glenwood Springs. I live in Silt. I've been in this valley for 40 years and I've seen a lot of change since marijuana became recreational. I would like to ask the City Council in the town of Glenwood Springs to adopt into city municipality HB 1230, which would allow a license for a retail hospitality marijuana license. Pretty new, so I'll read you a little portion of it. Subject to approval by both the state and local licensing authority, the act authorizes marijuana hospitality spaces in which medical and retail marijuana may be consumed on site, and retail marijuana hospitality and sales establishments in which retail marijuana concentrates and products may be sold and consumed on site, subject to local approval. Times have changed. Our marijuana industry in our valley has grown. During the pandemic, dispensaries were considered essential. They should be essential. Our community has a legal and safe place to consume. Locals that rent can't smoke in their home. Tourists vacationing in hotels or Airbnbs cannot partake due to smoking rules. So they can legally purchase, but there's nowhere for them to legally consume. I manage the 420 vacation rental here in Glenwood Springs. I often get calls from owners from various marijuana endeavors looking for a place of meeting, Christmas parties, etc. My goal is to open a discreet social marijuana business upon your approval. That I'm open to questions. Thank you, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you. So we don't usually do like a question and answer
Okay.
back and forth, but thank you for bringing that up. I just wasn't aware of that. So yeah, thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
And just real quick, Katie provided me some information. I can forward it to you, or you have it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Katie sent me some information. I think I forwarded it. I'll forward it to everybody. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you, Tony.
I just got it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. We'll bring it back for council comments. Go, Charlie.
Yeah, as you know, I'm the city's representative on the CML Board of Directors. My term comes up for renewal in June, and I need a letter of support from City Council, so I'm going to embarrass myself and ask for it in public.
I'll make a motion to write a letter on Charlie's behalf.
I'll second that. Motion by Ingrid, seconded by Marco. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for serving on
Anything else, Charlie?
That's all I have.
I think I saw her microphone go before.
I have a couple things. One, I had promised to clarify in our last council section. We were talking about our commissions and boards, and one of the questions that came up was an alternate in the role of being on a commission or board, and I'm telling too much here. But whether or not we had one that had a 81601 business. And I had mentioned that Sean Thomas on our airport commission was outside of our area, and he is actually a resident of the downtown Glenwood Springs area. And I just wanted to make that clear so that people knew that was where we're at with that. So that was one. And the second one I was going to bring up is the city is celebrating Earth Day on April 16th, and there has been some information sent out by Brianna Starbuck, and I just want to make it known in the public from our council that we hope people participate with some of the activities that are happening there. which include free compost pickup, giveaways, hazardous waste drop-off, e-waste drop-off, energy rebates, kids' activities. So we hope people participate with the city when we celebrate Earth Day on April 16th. And then one other event that's coming up this weekend that I believe Ingrid is participating in as well is Speak Up for Our Children, which is happening at the county courthouse on April 9th. And we hope some of you will join us at noon on April 9th at the county courthouse.
That's
Saturday, yes.
okay.
Any other council comments? Go, Charlie.
And I am the council representative for the Arts and Culture Board. And so I just wanted to make an announcement. This is out on social media and out on the city's website and stuff, but there's a call for artists. The Arts and Culture Board has put together a project to where they want to take these small Topex, which were put out for dining, outdoor dining during the COVID. And they'll still be in use now. The city had purchased, I don't know how many of these, 5 or 6 of these. So the Arts and Culture Board would like to make them colorful. So they're putting out a call for local artists within Garfield County to come together, and each art group can submit a panel side, an art concept, and then they will be juried and selected for which ones get to get painted. So it's an exciting project. It'll bring a lot of color to downtown. So if you want more information, check on the city's website and or look for posters like these and go and put the word out to artists, and hopefully this will be a fun project.
Anybody else?
I have one last one. That is
Oh,
the
Ingrid.
Microphone.
That we continue to work on our comp plan and that we need your feedback. So there are many opportunities. I think there's an upcoming event at the community center, but in addition, if you just Google comp plan Vision Glenwood and tag our map, the tag your map is an opportunity for you to actually look at a map of the city and pinpoint areas that you believe need some focus within the comp plan. So ultimately, the more feedback we receive, the better the outcome of the comp plan will be. So thank you.
Thanks, Ingrid.
So 20th, I think the next.
April 20th is the next session for the comp plan. Anybody else? Okay, I have a couple proclamations. I'll just read them one after the other, but the first one is a proclamation for Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month. I'll just say, just as a preface, my father-in-law was diagnosed with Parkinson's a couple months ago, so I really appreciate Suzanne and others for bringing this forward. I think this is something that affects a lot of people in the valley. Whereas Parkinson's disease is a chronic, progressive neurological disease and is the second most common neurodegenerative disease in the United States, affecting almost 1 million people in the United States, with one person being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease every 9 minutes. The disease is expected to rise to 1.2 million individuals by 2030. Whereas Parkinson's disease is related health issues are the 14th leading cause of death in the United States, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Whereas it is estimated that the total national economic burden of Parkinson's is $52 billion to the U.S. economy each year. Whereas research suggests that the cause of Parkinson's disease is a combination of genetic and environmental factors, but the exact cause and progression of the disease is still unknown. There is no objective test or biomarker for Parkinson's disease, and there is no cure or medication to slow or halt the progress of the disease. Whereas the symptoms of Parkinson's disease vary from person to person and can include tremors, slowness of movement and rigidity, difficult with balance, swallowing, chewing, and speaking, cognitive impairments and dementia, mood disorders such as depression and anxiety, skin problems, sleep difficulties. Whereas researchers, caregivers, and medical professionals are working to improve the quality of life of persons living with Parkinson's disease and their families through the research, education, and community support services necessary in finding more effective treatments and to provide access to quality care to those living with the disease today. Now therefore, I, Jonathan Godis, Mayor of the City of Glenwood Springs, do hereby proclaim April as Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month in the year 2022. I can sign this, and if anybody has something I can present it to, I can do that as well. Oh, yes, Mary, come on.
This is Mary Cloud. Mary is Assistant Executive Director of River Ridge Regional Center, and they're the ones promoting the event that Paula talked about on Saturday. It's a fundraising event, but it's also to help child awareness. If you've seen pinwheels around town, that's also part of this program. And this wonderful woman is the one that keeps all this stuff running for the center. So.
All right. Thank you very much. Whereas children are the embodiment of dreams and aspirations for the future, and as such deserve to grow and develop in nurturing environments, free from fear and victimization. And whereas child abuse and neglect can be reduced by making sure each family has the support it needs in raising their children in a safe, nurturing environment. And whereas our society has a responsibility to protect our children and to help them thrive in a safe environment, as every child is entitled to be loved, cared for, feel secure, and be free from verbal, sexual, emotional, and physical abuse and neglect. And whereas the City of Glenwood Springs has dedicated individuals and organizations such as River Ridge Regional Center, Garfield County Human Services, Casa of the Ninth, Advocate Safe House, Glenwood Springs Police Department, Garfield County Sheriff's Office, 9th District Attorney's Office, and all who work daily to counter the problems of child maltreatment and help parents obtain the assistance they need. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships among families, social service agencies, schools, religious and civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and business communities. Now therefore, I, Jonathan Godis, by virtue of the power and authority vested in me as a mayor of Glenwood Springs, do hereby declare the month of April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in the city of Glenwood Springs, and do urge all of our citizens to join in dedicating their energies to cherishing our children and helping them grow and develop free from victimization so they may mature into successful adults. Their success is our success.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Mary,
much.
Mary, do you want to just say a little bit about this Saturday?
Yes, this Saturday is our fundraiser called Speak Up for Our Children. It is our second annual. Last year, we started this ceremony where we plant a pinwheel for each child that we served the previous year. This year, we're planting 284 pinwheels, much more than we have seen in previous years. In addition to our pinwheel planting ceremony, we'll be acknowledging and saying these children's Jane or John and their ages to highlight the awareness that it happens in our community and the children that we serve need our services. We'll also have some family activities, some food as well, the Roosevelt Art Bus and a bouncy house. We really want to also make it a day where families can come and learn from other organizations such as Casa of the Ninth, Advocate Safe House will be present, Raising a Reader, another local nonprofit, will be present. We want to acknowledge but also share in the hope that the children that have come to us, that they have seen or they have started the process of their healing. And so it's not all a heart-wrenching day. It's also an uplifting day that these children have received help in the services that they need. So come join us 12 to 4 on the courthouse lawn this Saturday.
Thank
And
you.
if anyone wants a pin, I have plenty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda minus item G?
I will make a.
I'll take Counselor Cobb, seconded by Counselor Wuso. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, let's take item G on its own. This is ordinance 2022-05. This is public title 90, public land, second reading. Shelley, you had questions?
Yes, and again, this item was kind of spread out. We had a conversation quite a while ago about putting, allowing some commercial activities. I think it came up with someone wanting to teach yoga in the parks, and how do we permit that?
It's high intensity interval training.
Right. Oh, and something like that also. So we're adopting this to allow that, and I just didn't see in the consent agenda item where some of the permitting regulations actually were. So if Brian could just speak to that a little bit. And we also, in this section, there were a lot of sections of code that were just crossed out and gone. So my question was, did those go somewhere else, or are they just?
Yeah, in some cases. So I went through it line by line on what was being removed and what was being relocated during the first reading. I won't go back all through that again, but just to briefly highlight some of the changes. For instance, we added adoption rules and regulations section that pointed towards rules for parks, boat ramps, archery range, our park fees, things like that, that would be adopted by resolution. Allows us to make some changes as needed a little easier. So that was added in. Certain acts prohibited within parks was taken out, and all those were put into the park rules and regulations.
And those live on the park website? Parks
Yes,
and Rec
yeah, and they're
website.
also posted at the parks.
Great. Okay.
There are some sections like 90, 30, 60 restrictions on use of park lands for commercial rafting and related activities that we addressed in our improvements to the boat ramp area and the staging areas, which no longer require these restrictions. So we built to accommodate some of those uses that we were having conflicts around. So that section was removed, not relocated anywhere. It was just, it was no longer relevant. And then we also moved sections in 90-50-50 licensing of commercial tree cutters, and that now lives under the contractor licensing with community development in section 70.
Okay. And then for the permitting of commercial activities in the parks, do we have some kind of bounds on that? What might be allowed in the parks and what?
Yeah, so we have a lot of discussion about this, and we got consultation with legal, and we had put in appropriate recreational activities, and it ended up getting taken out. And I think the reason for that, I was just texting back and forth with Carson, trying to remember why it was that we removed that wording. We wanted to have the leeway and ability to make decisions on whether an activity fit, but we had to be careful with discriminatory language that renting of a public space, that we don't say anything that might impede First Amendment rights or things like that. And I think our attorney could probably speak to more legal jargon than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really trying to recognize that we kind of need to take these things a little bit on a case-by-case basis and try to be careful that we don't sort of establish a set of rules that inadvertently create some First Amendment issues by precluding or allowing certain types of speech in the park, but not others.
Right.
We honestly, other than the one operator, have not seen a lot of interest in using the parks in that fashion.
Okay.
So I think for right now, we're going to take a kind of a case-by-case approach and see what sort of naturally develops as a result of that.
For commercial
For
activity.
commercial activities.
Okay. I have a little bit of concern about it when it's based on just one person making
Well,
that
it's-
decision or a couple of
I
people?
any of those would be, obviously, it's a team approach that we take
Okay,
to all of those things, whether it's, expressly written down or not.
right.
There's always a conversation and interdepartmental conversation, whether it's legal and parks and ComDev and the manager's office and public works and streets, you know what I mean? Like
Great.
this is
And
never
it's
just
not
in a
the,
vacuum.
yeah, and it's, to be clear, it's not a concern of like the staff now. It's more about as you have staff changes and you might have changes in interpretation or direction that aren't intended, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's actually some pretty good internal controls that we deal with all of these things on.
Okay. Okay.
You know, Joey, we have another round of changes to 090 that are coming
Mhm.
that deal with street trees, the airport, and we might make a few other tweaks. We have a mechanism within memorials, like memorial benches and things like that. We have a standard for what can be put in. And if someone requests something outside of that standard, they have to go through Parks and Recreation Commission for approval.
Okay.
I think we could probably put in
Okay.
a similar mechanism, if that's something you're concerned about, that if it really doesn't fit in within a typical park use, then that approval goes to the Parks and Rec Commission for consideration.
Okay, that sounds good.
Jonathan, if I just may. Carl, I think generally speaking, and I think it's a valid concern Shelley's raising, but if there's quote unquote abuse of discretion, there is an appellate process, is there?
There absolutely is.
Yeah,
As with everything
that's what I
like that,
thought.
there's a process to appeal those administrative decisions.
Thanks.
All right. I guess I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for the approval of ordinance number 2205, many sections of Title 090, public land, second reading, on second reading.
Been motioned by Counselor Willman, seconded by Counselor Hershey. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, first item on the regular agenda is Planning and Zoning Commission appointments.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
If you, as long as you push the button.
Yep, I got to push the button. Absolutely correct. Okay, great. I would like to move that we, as a council, appoint current alternate Commissioner Hardcastle as a permanent commission member to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that we also appoint applicant April Davy to the Planning and Zoning Commission
Second,
As an alternate.
as an alternate. Absolutely.
still second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
All right, Financial Advisory Board appointment. Just Counselor Willman or Counselor Stepp?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we. Sorry.
Oh, what?
Okay, here we go. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Spencer Graff to our Financial Advisory Board. I had an interview with Spencer a few weeks back and we have a vacancy on that board, and so I'm making that motion.
It's been moved by Counselor Stepp, seconded by Counselor Cop. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. For those keeping track, we're about 20 minutes ahead of time. That was what I knocked on. Do we have to, we already took it off the agenda, so we don't have to address 16 or 17?
Right.
Okay, so on to number 18. This is the Department of Natural Resources presentation on the South Canyon project.
I promise I will put you behind 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, if you really want me to.
That's not a way to get.
You didn't see the 3-minute warning.
I'm Sarah Tapia. I'm with the Colorado Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety. I've been here before. Some of you I recognize, some of you I don't. So thank you again for having me. And I will be brief, but I would like to just go through some of the work that we did. Oh, thank you. It's like a Zoom meeting. I just want to update you on some of the work that we have been doing over the last 2 years, and then what is planned moving forward. So can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, there's something weird happening here.
She's gonna expand it when she shares the screen.
I've got the spinning wheel.
You have
Exactly.
to share your file.
What do I have to do?
You have screen share, but you gotta actually hit the file.
I think she's coming in.
Yeah.
Listen.
The Zoom quit is what happened. So
The answers to all our questions are Alyssa or Matt. Sometimes Carl.
No.
That was Brian, yeah.
Sometimes you-
Brian.
Yeah, that's true.
Poor Carl.
At your leisure.
Could never change.
There's this maybe internet went down.
Almost never.
See, I told you, 20 minutes.
Ah,
Just like that.
It was a great presentation. We really enjoyed it.
Hey, Tara, for the public's interest, you want to give a little background on it?
Yeah, sure. Am I ready?
No, she's.
Okay.
something back.
Yeah, so, you know, DRMS been working in, South Canyon for 30 years at this point. Probably since the beginning of our program in the early 1980s. So maybe that's more than 30 years now. But anyway, and prior to that, you know, it's a coal mining camp. The mines were, operated there, through the early 50s when they were then abandoned. And at some point, the city of Glenwood acquired those lands.
Could you speak more to the microphone just so
Sure.
people can hear you?
Yeah,
Thanks.
and so, the earliest reported fire out, at Glenwood, or at the mine was in 1902, I believe, is that correct? 1902, and the miners blockaded off the fire on that west side and mined underneath the creek and continued mining the east side to the 1950s when the fire overtook the mine and the mine was abandoned. Since that time, the fire has really, been uncontrolled. It's a extremely challenging coal mine fire. It's in very steeply dipping coal beds. It is our most active coal fire in the state, and it's our number 1 and 2 priority for doing mitigation work. The biggest thing that we do is, you know, our primary objective out there is wildfire danger. And trying to keep the surface from catching on fire from. So just to orient you, if you don't know, South Canyon, west of Glenwood Springs, and there's 2 sections, like I had alluded to prior, east and the west sides of the canyon. Again, we've been collecting data out there for 20+ years. We drilled in 2014 and 15, which gave us some information. We're able to monitor temperatures. We do snowmelt observations where we actually fly a unmanned, for lack of a better term, drone over the sites. We look at snowmelt. We look at where the fire is in relation to current vegetation. We fly a thermal camera, and we have to do that very early in the morning before the sun comes up. We've mapped the surface. We've created a 3D model, and we visit the site at the very least quarterly, but I mean, I would say somebody is here probably most months of the year. And in the summertime, we're here even more than that. In 2020, we did a soil cover project, which was the last time I presented to you guys. I told you about that project. We graded and capped 4.5 acres of area low on South Canyon East. We also put an impermeable clay layer on that, then soil on top of it, and revegetated that area. We also, just after I was here the last time, which was November of 2020, we applied a Nutrifix product, which is a fertilizer that's actually has been developed. It's a fertilizer that inhibits cheatgrass growth. So the items in that fertilizer, the nutrients in that fertilizer are not well liked by cheatgrass. And so cheatgrass is so flammable. So we have gone ahead and used that on that South Canyon East. Limited results. We had this whole area, this is what it looked like when we were done. We had a blanket of thistle out there. Last fall, we got out and sprayed the thistle because, again, fire danger. They grow so tall out there because of the warm ground. So we hit it really hard with herbicide, and then we did another Nutrifix treatment and then reseeded. And so fingers crossed, we see less weeds out there this year. That was one of the things we did in 2021, was the weed spraying on South Canyon East and the Nutrifix application. On South Canyon West last year, we had a hot spot that had kind of started to flare up in the winter of 2020. And I'm gonna point, can you guys see my cursor?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so it's right here. Where the cursor was.
Can you tell us what it is with respect to like the road that goes up the landfill?
Sure, so when you go past, if you make the left, instead of going straight into the landfill, you make the left, and then it's probably about a half of a mile up. So there's the gun club gate on the right, and then there's the big pullout on the gun club on the left, the big pullout on the right. And if you go up to where there was an old shooting range, like the illegal shooting range or whatever that was up there, if you look straight up, that's the gully that this, that's in this photo, that's this gully right here. Anyway, so we cleared about half an acre of vegetation and sprayed herbicide there because we had this little hot spot that was forming. And we visited the site today, and we were quite glad that we did that last year because that area is becoming active. So now we've got to go back and try and figure out what was even over there. Maybe there's an old air shaft from the mine or something that's opening up, but you know, we're seeing some good 200-300 degree temperatures on the surface there. So very happy that we got that vegetation cleared. We did monitoring last year in May, July, September, December, and March. And then we also spent some time in December hiking around through the landfill all the way up to South Canyon West. One of our biggest challenges with South Canyon West is access. There's no road. Well, there is a road, but it's incredibly steep and quite dangerous. So we were trying to develop a new road alignment, and we did some analysis. And so that's the next thing I'm going to talk about. This is in order to do any kind of meaningful reclamation on that South Canyon West side, we have to have access that we can put equipment and trucks and everything on. And so we evaluated, and they should probably be switched option 1 to the one that we actually should do, not the one that we are going to throw out. But so option 1 right now on this map is the green line. That is the road up from the landfill side. After doing the evaluation, it does 13 switchbacks, moves through a very steep section of heavily timbered area. I think the environmental damage that we would do to build this 2.5 mile road is not really worth it, given that we already have a road in the mine fire. So option 2 is working with what's there, trying to make it less steep, and kind of using the whole valley and trying to put the road over the areas that aren't on fire, so that we can get up into the site. And so that's the option that we really would like to move forward with. Yeah.
And where does this originate?
Okay, so do you see my cursor?
I do.
This is South Canyon Road. This is the turn to go towards the Coal Camp Trail. So there's a gate right here. This is our old access. And you kind of go along where the trail is, and then it goes very steeply up. And you can actually see it when you ride those trails, if you've ever been on those trails. The old road goes straight up the hill. And so we would follow that alignment on that 2-track that's existing. And then when we start to go up the hill, then we would be working to make it less steep. A couple good switchbacks in there to access the whole site. And I really think that this is the way to go. It's only 3/4 of a mile of road versus 2.5 miles of road. And it's in an area that's pretty damaged. So we wouldn't be damaging anything. We wouldn't be taking down nice stands of trees or anything like that. The only issue with this are some potential impacts that would happen. there would potentially be, with any work that we do up there, we're gonna have an increase in traffic on South Canyon Road. We are gonna have to close a portion of the mountain bike trails. And we're willing to work with the city, the Mountain Bike Association, whoever we have to work with to make that, you know, something that everybody can be happy with. The bigger picture here is putting out a coal fire that is a potential huge wildfire danger, as opposed to closing a trail for, you know, a few months at a time. So
it's a temporary.
it's a temporary closure. Yeah, it would only be while we're working. And I would say like we could even have the trail open outside of working hours. So if our contractors stop at 5 p.m. and we would be willing to put that kind of stipulation on them, like no work after 5 p.m. and then the trail could open in the evenings, or, you know, whatever the land manager, the city of Glenwood, and the Mountain Bike Association kind of ask for us, we're willing to work with. We're also willing to reroute a portion of that trail if necessary to bring it down to the road, and then they could re-access up where the Cole Camp Trail goes up. So I think there's some options. I'm a mountain biker. I really love those trails. So, you know, I want to make it as, you know, good as it can be. And really, I think those are the only major impacts of using the road alignment that is existing. So I did want to touch briefly on the infrastructure legislation that passed this winter. Has been a big win for us. Our annual budget is going from 2.8 million, and that's for Cole and Hard Rock and all of our staff and vehicles and everything. We'll be getting an additional $10 million a year from that bipartisan infrastructure legislation that is solely for coal, abandoned coal mine reclamation. So this provides a big opportunity for us, DRMS, to work with you guys, the city, to develop a long-term plan to manage and hopefully be able to walk away from that fire in 15 years and have the fire either be out or completely contained, and something that the city of Glenwood can manage on their own. That said, in 2022, we would like to finalize the design for the road. I do have some vegetation clearing that I think we need to do on South Canyon East and South Canyon West to reduce the surface fire danger and the wildfire danger for the summer. Do some rock armoring as well. And these are almost like catch basins, kind of down below the areas that are really hot. And there's the potential for something to roll, a hot piece of material to roll down some sort of a rock lined catch basin in a couple of locations. These are Band-Aid fixes. And then continue development of our mitigation strategies. Moving forward into 2023, I would like to construct the road in South Canyon West, potentially do a little bit more exploratory drilling to really define our boundary of the fire, and finalize our designs for at least phase 1 in South Canyon West and design phase 2 in South Canyon East. And then in 2024, begin to implement those mitigation strategies, looking, you know, down the road at really having large projects that will likely include large scale excavation. That is our most powerful tool at putting out coal mine fires. It's not going to be easy in South Canyon, and I'm not even sure that it's 100% feasible. So it will likely be a mix of mitigation strategies, including excavation, potentially some drilling and grouting, or something called a grout curtain. So it would be similar to putting like, you know, like a wall of grout at the front end of the fire, so that, you know, down through the coal seams, so that the fire can't continue to move past that. It would have to be thick enough, and our other mitigation strategies would have to get the temperatures low enough that that makes sense. But so we have a lot of planning to do, but the good news is that we're going to have the money to do it. And we have 15 years of this increased funding to be able to actually start to do some meaningful reclamation out there. So that's it. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I have a question. My understanding is this fire burns outside of South Canyon as well. Is that, like, I've heard, okay, across from the river from Newcastle?
So it's not the same fire.
Oh, it's not the
Okay,
same.
so we
Okay.
actually have 38 underground coal fires in the state of Colorado that we actively monitor.
Okay.
Some are bigger than others. But yes, you're not wrong. There are, in Garfield County, there are 15
Wow.
coal mine fires. So South Canyon is probably our biggest, but we have a couple other really big ones even in Garfield County. And then there's about 4 or 5 that you see along the highway. Newcastle 1, Newcastle 3, I don't
Okay.
even know all the names, but they're all on fire, so.
And well, that just
Sorry.
makes me a little more nervous, but thank you for answering that.
Well, for whatever it's worth, like
so much.
the geology at those sites isn't quite as concerning as what we see at South Canyon and a couple of the other ones. There's no exposed, the way it dips away from the surface is, I think it's better.
Okay,
And they're not super active, even though you see green grass in the middle of winter. So,
all right, thank you.
sure.
Question. Thank you, Tara. A quick question on the work that was done on the east side crossing. Is there monitoring of that, and do you know how effective that has been?
Yeah, so I don't have any like quantitative data to show you,
Okay.
and I haven't actually dug into the quantitative data. Qualitatively, the snow melt zone is smaller.
Okay.
So that's great.
Mhm.
We also see significantly reduced emissions from that site. Just it's not as active. So I think we're getting like worse air quality out of it, but I think the quantity of it is lower, if that makes sense. So the
Okay,
fire is
right.
struggling.
All right.
When we first finished it, it stunk up there. And
Huh.
it's still pretty stinky, I think, on South Canyon East, but yeah, I just don't have any quantitative data to provide you right now.
Okay, but it sounds like it's.
It
somewhat
definitely,
positive.
again, it's
Yeah.
a Band-Aid fix. That was not designed to do anything except slow the fire down until we could figure out what we could do over there. And if
Okay.
we were gonna have money to do it.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Do we need to take any action, Deborah? Or do you need anything from us on this?
Think you wanted kind of like initial, like, yes, I'm okay with this plan.
Yeah, and I don't even need that right this second, but I would like to make sure that the city and the council are on board with our plans for the road. Because it is a big impact and people are gonna notice, and we may have some people that aren't happy about it. So I feel like I needed more than just me calling up, Brian and saying, hey, we're gonna do this, so.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd like to move that we move forward with the Department of Natural Resource presentation tonight and with the plans they have outlaid in front of us.
Been moved by Counselor Dem, seconded by Counselor Wusa. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. It's your blessing.
I appreciate it.
It's not a blessing, it's enthusiastic. Thank you for doing this.
I'm pro fire.
Of course.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you very much. All right, next item is the Silver View project update and trail system.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I was reminding myself of like the really complicated finance.
Hey, Carl, can I ask, because a couple of our council people have come on board since this all started, just a
Sure,
little
absolutely. To get a
background?
little bit of background on it.
Thank
And actually, I'm gonna actually ask Shelley to do that because she has been involved in kind of the background on this. and how
Okay.
it Sort of got to where we are, and then I can run through kind of the deal points that are. in
To
the
do
background.
what? I'm sorry, I missed that question.
Background on the whole, why we're looking at this and how it all started, so that Councilor Dem and Councilor Wusa have been on some of these conversations, but just kind
Okay.
of like where are we at? Or where do we
Well,
start?
And please feel free to chime in,
Sure.
Paula, because you've been involved in this too. But this initially came to us as from a citizen group that was formed in South Glenwood, that Glenwood Green, Keeping Glenwood Green, I think was part of it. There was a lot of homeless camp activity on this property. It's about 130 acres above Walmart there, south of town. And the trash collection was terrific. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the pictures that were there and everything, but the cities worked with the county and they went in and did, was it over $90,000 worth of cleanup? And that. do I have
That was
number
last
right?
summer. Yeah.
That was last summer. There had been a cleanup done even before that, but I think the frightening part of it was that there were dozens and dozens of full-size propane tanks up there, as well as countless number of the small propane tanks that were brought down from that hillside. So with the fire danger and everything, it's a real danger for the neighbors along that east side of town there. And so at that time, the camps were cleaned up. And I believe since that cleanup was done, there have only been 1 or 2 people that have been up in that area and active as far as living there. So the neighborhood also worked forward and brought forth this idea that if the property owner would be willing to put that property into a conservation easement or some type of easement to where we could preserve it and turn that into trails, because there's beautiful views of Sopris. There's an old ditch easement that runs along there anyway. People walk their dogs up there. And now that the property's cleaned up, the concept was, how do you keep it clean? How do you keep it from reverting back to what it was? And the concept is that if it's activated, that that would help to work towards that. The other thought was that down on that part of town, there aren't really a lot of active trails. You know, farther up towards the confluence, you have the trail up to the cemetery and up beyond Doc Holiday's. You've got the Red Mountain Trail. You don't really have a lot of trails on the mountainsides down there serving those south neighborhoods. So some of the neighbors got together and talked to Garfield County, and Commissioner Jankowski and myself. We had a conversation with the property owner, the current property owner, and he is willing to donate the land and go through ABLT. He just wants assurances that it's not going to go into hands of and be developed at some point. He wants assurances that if he's going to donate it, it becomes more of a public use type property. So I think that's where we go into the current
Yeah.
status.
So I think it was late last fall, council directed that I try to put together at least the deal points for how this would all come together, which is what you have in your packet. And so the mechanics are fairly straightforward. Mr. Forenza would donate ownership of a cleaned up property. So that would need to be on the day of transfer, it would need to be clean, the homeless encampments, that kind of thing. That would transfer to ABLT. At the same time, ABLT would then record a conservation easement against it and transfer it to 4 Points, who's the neighboring property that we think of as the Bell Rippey property. The city would need to have identified and have funding in place to actually be able to create the trail system. That is one of the conditions that 4 Points, they're very concerned that they just end up taking it and it's in the state that it is now and there's no funding to move forward. ABLT has identified a couple of sources that they're hopeful would fund it, but we don't have a funding stream. And I think the city would need to identify funds that would be used that aren't grant, maybe grant funding would come in later or could happen, but if for this to move forward, I think the city would need to have identified in its budget funds to complete this. One of the and that's part of why we're asking for direction, is because for us to figure out how much that is, we would need to go forward and actually come up with a design for a trail system up there. We know roughly trail building costs of $5 to $7 a foot, but we don't have a design. And so we don't know what that would look like. And obviously it's not budgeted for 22. The other thing that is really important to 4 Points as the property owner is that there be a fair amount of enforcement or assurances regarding, the activity, the homeless activity and encampments that we've seen up there previously on the enforcement side. From a city perspective, that presents a couple of problems. Currently, that property is outside the city boundaries, and so we'd really need to look to the sheriff's office You know, they are in much the same position we are, as that in the wide array of things that they have to respond to and shortages of staff. You know, I don't know that it's possible for them to guarantee that they're going to respond any more than it is for us. You know, if we annexed it and said, yeah, we'll take on enforcement, we have to recognize that there is a resource allocation issue here. And at some level, this property owner would need to accept that level of resource allocation for this to move forward. You know, we can't guarantee that we're going to go up and deal with every issue that pops up on the trail as a priority. And so I think that's something that we would just need, they would need to understand and agree to, because I think we can't guarantee police presence, right? So Shelley and I were talking before this on a couple of places where, you know, this is the wish list of everybody who's involved, with the exception of the city wish list, because you guys are going to make that. The things that we need to talk about, you know, how would we enforce, or would the county enforce, the cleanup at the time of acceptance is, you know, it's a little bit like buying a house, right? They want to know that you know, that it's there.
Room swept.
And just in general, there was a comment on the last phone call from kind of all of the parties that it had to be sort of risk neutral for them. In other words, nobody wanted to be taking on any additional exposure as a result of this. And I understand that, right? Everybody is cognizant of liability and exposure. So that's kind of where we're at. And I think from our standpoint as staff, if we're going to continue to move forward on this, we really need to design so we understand costs, right? And that's going to be a big part of this. I do know that Mr. Forenza would like to accomplish this, as would, I think, AVLT in the 2022 year, if they're going to get to closing. Just, you know, it's a tax year, you deal with things in your tax cycle. I think the expectation from AVLT is that the tax credits that would be available with the conservation easement sale would be kind of their endowment for the property. That wouldn't necessarily be reinvested directly into the property.
That would or would not?
Would not necessarily. I think they're willing to contribute some, but I think they're also like recognizing that they have, with these deals, AVLT, I mean, that's part of how they maintain their funding, right?
Okay.
For everything they do. So all of that having been said, I think we're at that point where it's kind of a decision point on, is this something council wants to move forward on? If you do, I think you need to start thinking about what you would be willing to budget for it, at least to get to design. We had a couple of conversations like, could we eyeball it or thumball, you know, kind of thumbnail, you know, with the way costs are, I'm uncomfortable doing that, frankly, because if we're off by a half mile on the trail length, that's a significant amount of money. And nobody has really designed that. So I hate to put staff in the position of saying, yeah, it's going to cost 300,000 or 50,000 or whatever that number. I have no idea what the number is, honestly. So that's where we're at. It's really up to you guys where you want to move forward on this and where it's prioritized for you.
Questions? Go ahead.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Not a comment.
Okay.
So my two questions.
It's on.
It's on. Why is he yelling at me? My two questions relate to you mean, we're going to spend all this money, Carl, is that what the suggestion is? And then where two problems come up that you sort of outlined that I'd asked you to expand on. One is when you create this public easement, the chief is here, you can't even enforce the camping rules within the city now. Now you've created this public land where people can camp and you're gonna have the same problem. The second being, I mean, it's my experience, and if Lou was here, he would probably tell you, but have you had an opportunity to talk to the sheriff? They're not enforcing this. They don't have the resources and they're not going to. So how are we going to police this area and keep it safe and protect the investment that we've made in millions of dollars in a trail?
Yeah. So a couple of answers to that. You're right. I mean, the question for tonight is the level of investment the city is willing to make, and that's you guys' realm. On the enforcement side, one of the reasons why we have always viewed this as wanting to structure it as a public easement on private property is that the private property owner can enforce trespass rules. Whether it's in the county or in the city, they can put up no trespassing signs. They can, if law enforcement is available, they can enforce against trespassers, which we couldn't do if we owned it, which is one of the big reasons that I have always suggested not owning it, and I think that the county doesn't want to own it. Setting aside some concerns about just generalized liability issues. So that's the enforcement side. I don't have an answer for you on being able to guarantee that we can be up there because we have X amount of resources and those get allocated on a priority basis. And I think Lou is in the same position and would say that.
Thank you.
So from the history that I remember on this, there were other players in this at the beginning. RFOV was one of them on probably helping with trail building and that type of stuff. And I know they were a pretty avid advocate for looking at this. And I just want to know, are we reaching out to them? Is there a possibility of an IGA with the county as far as some of the funding that might be needed? And can ABLT actually define what they could contribute towards this rather than just saying, oh, we could do something? Could we make that part of that IGA?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, so here's when Aaron from ABLT and I started working on this. One of the things we wanted to do is make sure we understood the major players, what they needed to have happen, because we've got multiple ownerships that it has to transfer through. And so really kind of the 4 entities that have to have a legal interest in the property were the 4 that we focused on, which is Mr. Forenza selling it to ABLT, 4 Points in the city, because those are the 4 entities that are going to have a property interest of some sort in it.
Well,
Either
the county until things are
Well,
transferred.
let me, so the county is never going to hold title to it.
Right.
So from a property interest standpoint, we need to negotiate an easement. ABLT needs to negotiate a conservation easement. They need to hold ownership to it for a moment in time. Forenza needs to transfer it. 4 Points has to be comfortable accepting title. So that's why we focused on those 4 entities as to what do those 4 entities need to get to this point. And I think the question around what does RFOV do, or hopefully I know Shelley received a text that the county might participate, at least one commissioner believes they might participate in. Those are all questions that I think are in partnerships that could be created, but the need of 4 Points is to know, and I think really ABLT is to know that regardless of that, the city is committed to making the trail happen. And then if we can backfill, that's great, but they need to know that we will provide that funding if nobody else does.
Can I just jump in real quick about the trail? Sorry, but does RFOB, RFMOB, do they think this is a good site for trail? I mean, Brian, have you talked to Mike Pritchard? Is he excited about?
Well, no,
this is
you're confusing
RFOB.
two entities, not the Mountain Bike Association, Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers.
Yeah,
It just
you're right. I
helps-
totally am. Mountain Bike
Right.
Association. is where
Mountain
I'm
Bike
at.
Association, I don't think is that interested in the site, doesn't, it's not exactly what they'd be looking for.
I see.
From a hiking trail standpoint, RFOV early on expressed some interest, but they, any hiking trail is a
Gotcha.
good hiking trail.
That's fine, because I just heard the verbiage of mountain bike trails. And so I'm like,
No, hiking trails.
hiking trails. Okay, thanks. Sorry, Brian, Demita.
Okay,
I apologize as
that's
well.
okay. So my question is that I see that within the packet that Walmart would be the parking place. Have we had any dialogue with them?
I believe Aaron with ABLT has had some dialogue with them over that. I don't know how much parking they'd be willing to dedicate. And obviously, one of the Waltons is one of the
Yeah.
potential funding sources that ABLT is very interested in engaging. There again, these are all questions that I think have to hinge on your decision whether or not you're willing to commit that you'll fund the trail.
Okay, so then my next question, and I think Deborah's going to probably step in and give us this direction, is what is the timing on this? What do we, if we were to give you kind of an affirmation that, yeah, this is something that the majority of us are interested in, what's next?
I mean, I think at that point, we would start looking at trying to design the trails so we know what they will cost so we can fund them. And of course, we would look for outside funding,
Mhm.
but as Carlos pointed out, like that is not no guarantee ever. We don't know. And I need to hear from you guys is we want you guys to do this.
Mhm.
What I'd say is from a fiscal impact standpoint, we're gonna have trail design and 50,000. Brian? because every consultant, I have a joke that every consultant costs 50, but probably around 50 for design. And then there's going to be a number attached to what it costs to build that design. And the linchpin for getting this done is that funding will be available to move it forward, right? So there's, I guess, we could spend $50,000 on design and come back, and you guys would be like, no, we don't, we're not going to guarantee funding. That is a possibility. I guess we'd be more comfortable knowing you really want to push forward on this to keep moving.
And then is there a time frame with AVLT and Forenza?
Everybody would like to get it done in 22 for tax reasons.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that's kind
I
of
was just
the,
kind of needing some.
yeah, no,
structure. You
we're
had- you
trying,
mentioned it,
and
but-
a lot of credit to this group for getting together and like banging through, this is what we need to make this happen and work. I think, I think everybody is pretty committed if the city is. And if the city's not committed, then I don't see a deal coming together in the absence of the city.
Charlie, then Paula.
Carl, the hypothetical that we end up in ownership of this property, I don't remember the number of acres, and we have a camping problem up there and they start a fire and it burns down 4 points. Buildings they're putting up right now. Could that end up being?
That's precisely why we will never have title to this property.
Okay, yeah, because my concern is that would not only will we have to pay insurance to recover it, but we might lose our insurability.
Right. I mean, one of the things that has been a cornerstone for me going into this is that the city never owned the property for two reasons. One is that the more salient one is a private property owner can enforce trespassing laws, can request they be enforced, whereas we as a city, it's public lands and it's much harder. There's no trespass. We own a trail easement, not the property itself.
Okay, I thought that the deal was we had owned the property.
No, we don't own the property. 4 Points would own the property. There would be burdened by a conservation easement for the benefit of ABLT and a trail easement for the benefit of the city. So our only interest would be the trail easement.
Paula.
There's something in here, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to read back and I don't see where it was, but something about annexing. Why would we need to annex this property?
So when we were talking about enforcement, we can't use our police officers to enforce if it's in the county.
Okay,
So that would be one mechanism to allow us to enforce rather than to ask the sheriff's office to enforce on no trespassing, homeless camps.
so it's an option to.
It's an option.
to
It's
do
not a
it.
requirement. I was just kind of running through, here's a couple of ways to
Okay.
address the enforcement question.
And I have another question. So I feel like I understand the 4 primary people, but I also feel like there is potential. It's like, I want to understand this clearly in my head. There's potential for an IGA to take care of some of this monetary burden that the city might agree to right now to be the backup, but we still would have that opportunity in the future for an IGA to say, well, yeah, we need the county in here and we
We
need
do. We
Walmart.
would have to, though, to get the parties to the table. That couldn't be a contingent piece of the deal. Like they're not going to move forward and transfer the property, grant the conservation easement, hold title of the property as 4 Points, unless the city has committed to and guaranteed that they will build the trail system without contingencies.
And can we as city council say, we'll commit to this, but we're also asking the staff to work on this IGA and see what kind of
Absolutely.
agreement.
You
we
just
can
have
get.
to recognize that we always look for other funding sources. You just have to recognize that to make the deal happen, you have to commit to the full funding. You can't change your mind later, I guess is what I'm saying.
And tonight, we don't have what that full funding cost is.
We don't. That's the part of why we're here tonight, is that the next step would be actually designing a trail so that we can understand what that full funding cost would be. It's kind of a decision point on if there's not even an interest in moving forward with designing a trail system, then we're kind of done. If there is interest in committing resources to designing the trail, then that would be the next step to move forward.
And can those resources be internal? Can it be city staff or does it have to be
We're
external?
going to have to, trail design is a specialized area, so it's not going to be something that, we can do internally. We're going to have to bring somebody in to
Okay.
do that.
Thank you for this.
Oh, hold on.
When can I make a comment?
We're still asking questions.
I know, I'm asking, my
After-
question is, when can I make a comment?
After the questions are done.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Charlie.
I did ask my question.
Carl, I had a question on, as far as the county sheriff not enforcing, my understanding was when we had the discussions about trying to move this forward, that they did commit to enforcing.
I
the
think what they
private
are is that they
property.
will enforce like they do for any other similarly situated property. And I'm acknowledging the fact that our law enforcement staff is short everywhere.
Everywhere.
And
Yes.
that a trespass on a trail system or just off a trail system is probably not going to be on a regular basis, someplace that the county sheriff can commit resources.
Mhm.
And that's not because Lou said he couldn't. It's because I just know that we're all struggling to have enough resources for the calls that require priority.
Right, right. So I have another question, maybe this is for Brian or others, but we have trails up Red Mountain. We have trails up to Cemetery, but that's been there a long time. But we have all the trail system at Wolf Shown. How much of those have the city actually paid for construction? I mean, have we typically
We-
paid for construction of those trails, or?
Yeah,
Is it our own fault?
contributed
Okay.
certainly for all of those. Red Mountain, majority of the funding was done through RFMBA.
Right.
We contributed 90,000,
Something
like that.
Okay,
to that
and
one.
there were historic trails there before that I don't know that were built by the city, but, and then the whole Wolfson network, a lot of that was built by Era OB, I believe. Is that right?
A lot of that was done actually as part of the original kind of developer package.
Okay, So-
So certainly, like, I mean, certainly we haven't paid for everything on every trail, but we've
Right.
certainly paid something on every trail.
so that's my question here is that I'm kind of tempted to push back a little bit on the city having to commit to funding the whole trail construction, because I don't think historically we do that. We always find partners and funding, whether it's RFOV or grant funding. So to have to commit to that up front, I'm just questioning that because it
What I
really-
will tell you is that nobody wanted to execute documents on the deal without a high degree of confidence that the city will build this trail if they get the easement. Because certainly where I started was, hey, this is great. We'll take the easement, and when funding becomes available, we'll move forward with it. And I didn't get any traction with
And
that.
did you get the understanding though from ABLT? I mean, they've talked about this Katina.
Right,
different
everybody is looking for grant funding.
Right.
4 Points wants a commitment from the city that the trail will get built
Okay.
regardless
Okay,
of what happens. Like I said, my starting position was we'll take a trail easement, and when we can find funding, we'll look for funding, and when we can find funding, we will build it when we can find that funding. And that wasn't something that 4 Points was comfortable with, because their concern is taking title to the property without the trail system and the activation going on, and then having to deal with the encampment problem that we have today.
okay.
One last question, I promise, Jonathan. Right. So we don't see the alternatives. We don't see, okay, so the city says no, what happens to that property? What are we looking at?
I think it remains in its current state with its current owner.
So we could again be looking at 2 or 3 years from now, going paying $90,000, removing trash again, worried about fire.
Fire danger.
Right, no, I mean, absolutely. I guess that's why we're here, is that like
I just want to make sure that they understand these 3 other players. If
Right,
we
well-
don't do all these things that you want, this is where we're at. Do they
Right,
understand
and
that?
I mean, I think they do, but that really only affects Mr. Forenza. AVLT isn't implicated, 4 Points beyond, there's a risk up the mountain from them, but there will be regardless. They're not really implicated. So, I mean, it really, and
But doesn't it affect the neighborhood and that?
I mean, it does. I guess what I'm saying is from the standpoint of these 4 players, and the question was, how do their positions change? Really, as to AVLT and 4 Points, their legal exposure is exactly the same as it is today. Mr. Forenza's is exactly the same as it is today. Are there other issues going on there in terms of, the encampments and all of that and the impact on the neighborhood? Absolutely. I mean, I will also acknowledge that if they move from there, they will go someplace else on public lands near the city. So from that standpoint, I don't know that it isn't as if we transport the problem out of town. Right. I mean, it solves it for this property, but I'm going to be real honest.
We have it all over town. anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But we haven't seen a comparable mess to that level pop up anywhere else as a result of.
Right, because it's there. So, I mean, I'm just being really honest, and I think the police chief can speak to this as well, probably on generalized experience that, like, when you displace a population, they will find another place to be.
Which is why we're working on our homeless issue.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
think Tony's question is very pertinent. I think we're into the comment phase, or I think we've been getting slowly into the comment phase through our questions lately. So
Can my comment take the form of a question?
what is, go ahead.
Why are we talking about this with all the other needs in this community? This just seems like a non-starter to me, to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on a trail system that is not in the city, that we can't police, that we can't afford to maintain, that we, I understand. And Paula, I was visited there with you, or maybe it was with Shelley. No, it was with Paula. And I understand that you care very much about that area and keeping it safe. But I'd rather spend another, frankly, $80,000 in a few years to clean it up again than millions of dollars and have our trails destroyed and have people camping there. For me, this is a non-starter. Thank you.
I was a little bit ahead of myself. Does anybody from the public want to comment on this? Yes, sir. It is.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
didn't know.
I forgot to throw the public comment section in.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Ty Richardson, 3135 County Road 134. Of course, I found out a little bit tonight. I didn't realize that it was a hiking trail only, right? Because actually I was just off the phone with the City of Steamboat Springs and also the Colorado Wildlife Federation and the Colorado Wildlife Organization, which I belong to both of those, about this particular project. Now, one of the major differences on it is both of those absolutely endorse it. And the reason they endorse it, it's in a valley floor. It doesn't eat up any wildlife habitat versus when we get to the top of Lookout Mountain where we're getting into critical wildlife area. So what's happened, if you follow the model from Steamboat Springs, basically they have endorsed, it's part soft surface, part hard surface. And what they have done, they've endorsed that because it is in the valley floor versus what they call the Muddy Creek mountain biking thing. For me personally, when we get into any kind of trail systems, though, there's only really one caveat. They really need to be multi-use. What will happen in this area if it's hiking only, Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association will probably want to make their own trail systems. The biggest thing for habitat protection is that these trails actually are multi-use. And that can be done. It's been done very successful in Jefferson County. Just one other item on the South Canyon Fire. I'm actually a resident up there. I fully endorse what they're doing there as well. I think it's really well money spent, and I really thank Tara for her job on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ty. Anybody else? Go ahead. Hey, Craig. Yeah, so if you actually have comments on this would be great, but if you want to go to South.
I do, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to shut you off.
I mean, you know how important trails are. You walk out of your house, you can walk right down here without having to go over, past some cars, worrying about getting run over by a car. The trails isn't in Glenwood Park here. It's just wonderful. So in fact, Laura, her neighborhood has done a wonderful job. And I know Paula has too. I don't spend hardly any time over there, but I know the area really well. The area that connects Palmer to the back of Walmart is the best use of that is a trail system for sure. Now whether you can make that happen tonight, I know there's a lot of schematics involved in this, But for sure, going forward, that is for sure where a trail system should be. You have a huge development that you guys approved over there that's gonna be coming online. There's gonna be kids playing up there all the time. And the best way to remedy that situation is create high-value trails back there. And Tony, I usually agree with you, but on this one, I can't agree with you on this one. You and I
That's
walked
okay.
that property with Laura. I mean, what a disaster. Holy cow.
Come up with the money.
Yeah, no, I don't have the money, so I got
Then
this.
we're not gonna do it.
Yeah, it's cheap, I get it, but there is gonna be money available for stuff like that from grants and other stuff to fund that kind of stuff. It might take 3, 4, 5 years, but that is the only use of that property back behind there. And those camps will clean themselves out the more you have kids playing out there and the more you have people connecting those neighborhoods back and forth. And that's the highest quality trail that you can build. And like Ty said, I agree with Ty. Don't be building these trails out in the middle of wilderness area. Build them to connect neighborhoods like West Glenwood, just like Jonathan's got at his house. It's wonderful. So I hope, even if you say no tonight, I hope it's a no, but yeah, we like this and this is what we need for the community back there, because I don't see any other future for it. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Craig.
I agree on everything.
Who's next? All right, seeing no one else, we'll close public comment and bring it back for additional comments. Go ahead, Council Wilman.
Just a couple of comments. I think, Carl, your idea, get the trail, we'll build it when we can, would be wonderful. And that ties in with Craig is saying too. I think it's a good idea and I think your comments are well taken, Craig. But I can't in good faith justify saying we're going to build this no matter what, and no matter what the cost is. We're trying to redevelop Sarah Park. We have got some great funding to be able to do that. There are other parts of Sarah Park we need to do. I know there's a few other improvements we need to do to Two Rivers Park that we put off when we built the path along the river. I just, this is not my view, even though it's a great idea to appreciate all the work you guys have done. It's just not my view, something that is a priority in my mind right now for spending, city spending, including spending $50,000 or $60,000 or more. I've learned just recently that the planning expenses of designing things have gone up tremendously in the last couple of years, as everything else, and I just can't support it. So I would move to adopt the staff recommendation of not moving forward.
Second.
Been moved by Council Wilman, seconded by Councilor Hershey.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just for clarity, I didn't have a recommendation.
No, I would say
Yeah.
the staff recommendation is in the packet. Staff recommends not moving forward. That's
No,
what I
actually, we didn't.
Unless it's a council
Council just
priority.
Yeah.
He's moving that it's not a. council.
Yeah.
Okay.
I apologize. I
I have
wasn't
a
blaming,
comment.
if that was intended, the thought I was blaming staff. It's not a staff, it's not a council priority, so I say we should not move forward. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
At this
Okay.
time,
At this time.
but we will someday.
All right, so moved by Councilor Wilman, seconded by Councilor Hershey. Further comments? I see, I know you, I think I saw one of you two and then I saw
Okay.
you. So I'm
Okay.
gonna go Ingrid, Shelley, Paul.
I think that with the completion of the Bell Rippey project and all of those homes moving into that area, this is an appropriate use of that land. And I think we need to ask ourselves, it's not a matter of what has historically been there. This is not a dialogue actually about the homeless situation, because I think that'll be gone and the property will be clean when it's transferred. So I think the dialogue here is, do we want to utilize that land as a trail system? And I think with the growth in that area, I think it's a totally appropriate use of the land. I'm in agreement with everything that Craig said. I also think that we are also in this position that the beautiful thing about a trail is that it's not like a building. We can just do a portion of it and we can add on as we have opportunities or grant funding becomes available. We don't always need to be black or white. When you're all making this decision, I'm sure every single one of us, if we had to write down a number for what we think the final cost would be, would probably be different. And I think the reality is that we can do this. We can just begin a trail system. But ultimately, I do believe that this is the highest and best use of that property. And it's it is timely and it's this opportunity that I think we should take advantage of. So I will not be supporting Charlie's motion.
Shelley.
And I will agree with Ingrid. I feel like, especially as someone, and you and I are neighbors, Charlie, but there were, I think, 2 or 3 fires on that property from 2019, maybe to 2020. I can't remember exactly, but there were significant fires up there that were started by the encampments. And the thought of, when we did the cleanup, finding those propane tanks up there is just horrific to me, to let the property go back to that state. And I agree, when we have a new development going in there, there's more need for trails in that area. And I feel like this is a very appropriate use of the property. And I'm not for necessarily spending hundreds of thousands or millions on building the trail, but I think it's a mutually beneficial project to move that forward. And I believe with even a verbal, casual commitment from the county, I think the county, we should approach them in good faith on partnering on the initial trail construction. I don't believe that's really been pursued or done. And I would like to talk to them and also talk to RFOB. I think we have a lot of potential to have partners on that construction. And I believe it's similar to trails that we've built in the past. We've always had partnerships in grant funding, and the maintenance isn't really high on rough wilderness or landscape trails like this, just hiking trails. And it's a great connection, as Mr. Amishaw said, it's a great connection for the neighborhood on that east side. So for the fire protection of keeping that property activated, making it a recreational opportunity for that part of town where there isn't really much in that area, I really want to see this move forward. But we need to somehow work on this agreement to where the city is not on the hook for completely funding it. So I'd like to see you work, to do that, but I won't be supporting the motion. If we'll leave it at that right now, and we'll see where the motion goes and how the vote goes and discuss further.
Paula.
I'm the one that always asks the questions about the money. I feel like it all the time. And that's why I'm looking at this and going, okay, how do we find the funding? But I feel like the decision tonight is our hands are tied. We've come to this point in an agreement. Unless you tell us that you're going to commit to a bunch of money, we can't do anything. And ever since we've started on this project a couple of years ago now, we've had a host of people come in as stakeholders, trying to be collaborative, trying to find common ground. And to come to this point right now where, the agreement is we can't do anything. We're just going to revert back to where we were if we can't renegotiate and find another term to this, just feels really binding to me. It feels like council has to carry the burden. And there are so many stakeholders in this that want this to happen that I feel like we take it back to the table again. Maybe we're not saying we're committing to a trail. And I can't support the motion that you've passed right now, because I firmly believe that we have a gap in this community of taking care of our community for opportunities like this. We spend a lot of money in our downtown core trying to take care of our visitors, which is very important, but we need to take care of our community too. We need to take care of our recreation. We need outlets for people. We need interconnections in our community. We often talk about, walkability with new developments and those type of things. And these are the kind of things that people who live here want. They want access to these places. So I don't want to turn this off tonight. And that's what I feel like this motion does. It says, okay, we're done. We're turning it off. When there are opportunities for people to come down and sit at a table and go, how do we make a difference here? And how do we make this work? So I can't support the motion. What I would look at instead is a motion to say, bring it back to the table again, bring in the other stakeholders that were involved earlier that just aren't part of this four-way package, and say, how do we do this? How do we make it happen? The city can't carry the burden, but we all can carry it together. And that's what I'd like to see happen.
just real quick response. I agree with everything you guys have said. I think we need the trail. I think it's a good idea, all that stuff. I can't sit here tonight and say, I go forward because we're going to commit to building the trail. I agree if we can do something else to get a better deal, but the deal is, as I understand it, is we build a trail and our deal doesn't go, and I can't support that.
Yeah,
There
if I
isn't anything
may,
about having a trail there.
if I may, and so that people understand, as the potential property owner, that property owner needs a degree of certainty that that trail is going to happen. And the only way to get that certainty is to have somebody who has the resources to make it happen, commit to it, right? So I know it doesn't make you happy that that's one of the parties' conditions of the deal, but I also have to be respectful of the fact that that was that party's condition of the deal. It's not me saying this is how it should happen, or AVLT even saying that's how it should happen. That's 4 Point saying we need certainty that if we're going to take title to this property, that a trail system is going to get built. And so that becomes a linchpin of how do you move it forward. It doesn't mean that we can't look for other funding sources later, right? Like that's not the implication, but the city has to be willing to commit to the idea for that level of certainty. And that's really what that property owner, potential property owner, is asking for. And I got to be honest with you, I think that's a fair ask on their part, right? Is that level of certainty, because all of those other things about who can bring what to the table, they're not certain until we know a cost. So if this motion fails, my ask would be is that you authorize the money to design a trail system so that we have actual costs. I mean, that was the other part of really what my ask was in the staff report, is that I don't know what it's going to cost. But there again, I think in fairness to the parties involved that are going to be the ones that own it, I understand why they want that level of certainty. And I think it's something that most of you would want, that level of certainty if somebody were going to cross your property with something significant.
And Shelley and Paul, just real quick, Paula and Shelley, to respond to you. I agree with Charlie, but you're asking to spend tens of thousands of dollars when you drive through your neighborhood. I was just there, Miss Wusso, and it's a disaster. Those streets need to be fixed. At the corner of Sarah Park and Highland Drive, whatever that is, it's like a roller coaster. We're going to just spend tens of thousands of dollars to design a trail that may never be built, which I think we should have a trail there. I'd love to have a trail there. Go play the lottery and build one. We don't have the money. And this council is like a kid in a candy store. I want that, I want that, I want that. And you're not fixing the teeth of the kid that you need to fix. You're ignoring the braces because you want to take a trip to France and we can't afford it.
So if we could go back to having the chair recognize people before they speak, that would be
I'm allowed
helpful.
to respond.
You're allowed when the chair recognizes you to respond. And so far, we're starting to have dialogue and construction. People are saying the same things over and over. There's two members of council we haven't heard from.
Right.
Counselor Dem.
May I?
You may.
Excellent. So everything I heard makes complete sense. Yes, the property lends itself fantastic for trail system. I have absolutely no problem with that. And I'm a person that does not use trails. So fantastic use of the property. I couldn't agree more. What I have to agree with Charlie with is that I feel like we're shooting in the dark. It's a complete shot from the hip. We don't even know how much we're going to spend on the design. If you guys can come back and say, hey, we got a bid, this is how much the design is, I may be interested in listening again. But in the meantime, all Charlie's moving is not a priority. So I feel like I got to go with that because I don't think this is a priority unless we can get some more solid numbers of the design is going to cost 75,000. Then I think we're not shooting in the dark anymore. So everything I heard is great, but I'm not sure we're there.
Damn. Okay. Go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, I was just going to counter, I think, to counter Marco's comment. I guess what I would hope tonight is what we could do is not kill it with the motion tonight, not kill this, but try to keep moving it forward, get the costs on what the trail design might be and talk to the county and see if they're willing to split trail costs, construction costs. You know, if we can change this item number 6 in this memo rather than it all being on the city. I agree with Tony. I don't want to spend $1 million on it, trail construction, in no way. But I guess I believe in my heart that it's kind of like having a shovel-ready project. We don't have all the money for Southbridge, but we're still moving forward because we want to get it done. That's all I'm asking tonight is let's not kill this, let's move forward. That's
May I? And I agree. Maybe I wasn't clear. If there was a way to say, yes, please bring us a price for the design, I'm all for it. Let's listen to that. But the way it sits right now, that Charlie made the motion is it a priority, yes or no? And no, staff deems it not to be a priority. So I understand. Can we rework the motion or can we add some caveats into this so we can move forward with this? Absolutely.
Could be.
My response is, there's nothing that would prevent, if this motion passes, from you making a motion saying, direct staff to see if we can renegotiate the agreement and do something that doesn't commit us to just spending money. And I'm curious.
If I may on that further, I think if we're going to take reasonable steps forward, council needs to at a minimum authorize that we solicit bids for design. Council would need to make a decision on whether or not they want to pay for that design. I know at least one or maybe two of the council members probably would never vote for that design because of their sense of priorities. So that's a lot of why we're here, right? Is how important is it to the entire council? Do you want to take any steps that involve additional staff time or resources to move this project forward?
That said, if there is a way to get pricing for design in before we say completely no to this, I might be interested. But that's not the motion we have on the table.
So I think we should vote maybe on the motion we have, and then if it fails, then we move forward with another vote.
Right.
And can we do that? Because we have been in situations where we said, nope, that was it. You can't do a counter motion.
No, I mean, if it passes, the motion, as I understand it, is it's not a priority. And the city is unwilling to commit to building the trail regardless, right? I think did I understand that correctly, Charlie? Not a priority, and that you're not willing to commit at this time to
build a trail without the cost. Yeah.
Without the cost, right?
But you're not commit, your motion was that it's not a priority. In my mind, that means we don't even pursue trail design.
Ryan, what was the motion? Point of clarification.
I don't know.
What? I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask for clarification.
Clarification.
I think Charlie moved that we not move forward with it at this time. That's
because it's not a priority.
Right.
That's
And that's
that
what
was
I
the motion.
seconded.
okay.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
So I think I am always, I think the hardest thing for me is this unfunded mandate of specifically where we're at right now with that deal point of saying, it'd be like if somebody said, hey, I want to sell you this house. Great. You can't do an inspection. Okay. It looks like the foundation, nope, can't look at it, can't ask me about it. You're stuck with whatever. Once I own that house, I gotta fix that foundation or else I'm stuck with it. I think I'm not opposed to having a conversation with county commissioners, but I have no faith that they will help out with the dime of this project because they have said specifically, they're not gonna help out with the dime of a project that could save up to 1,000 lives to Southbridge. So for them to come up with money for this, I think would be, the priorities would be completely out of whack. I think so many people want this to happen. I think that's true. Like, I think Roy for Mountain Bike Association, Roy for Out for Volunteers, there's a lot of different people. I know there's different groups are. But man, I tell you what, as soon as the city says we will guarantee that we take care of this, all those people will disappear into the woodworks. They will run away like Homer Simpson disappearing into their shrubs. Look at anytime of special events, summer music. If we say, listen, we are guaranteeing summer music to go no matter what, we'll make sure that's the day Jim New can't raise a penny from anybody else because the city is just guaranteed that. So I think the guarantee is what makes it difficult. As soon as I tell my daughter I'm going to pay for her college no matter what, she stops working a summer job. I know that's going to happen. There are so many different parts that are, we don't know where the parking is going to go as of today. Yes, the Waltons, like some members of the Waltons like mountain biking, but that doesn't mean that we can use their parking. We might be unwillingly committing to building and excavating a parking lot, bathrooms, trash. I've been very consistent. I think this whole thing is trash can, doggy bags. That's it.
That's not a lot.
That's not a lot, but we can't even hire full-time people to staff our childcare programs in the summer. We can't even hire people to empty trash cans in our downtown. How are we going to get people to go and maintain a parking area or trails or anything? I also want to maybe slightly disagree with Councilor Wusso. I think it is a homeless question that we cannot separate ourselves from, because we're talking about, it got cleaned up and all the homeless people went away. No, the homeless people, we had the exact same number of homeless people experiencing homelessness, in this community that we did a year ago. They just went somewhere else. We squeezed a toothpaste tube and it just went to Wilson. It went to Doc Holliday. It went other places, and we're seeing the exact same thing. I'm not gonna put you on the spot, Chief, but I know I hike those and bike those Wilson trails, and I have noticed, and I get complaints from the residents at the lofts, and we're going to have 300 more units at BLD. We have a lot of population out there. So it's kind of like picking winners and losers in neighborhoods, saying, well, I don't want people experiencing homelessness to be in this neighborhood. As long as they're over here next to these people that don't live there yet, but will, I'm not too worried about that. And I know that's not what you're saying. I'm not trying to categorize that, but the homeless population in this community are not going to go outside of this community because we clean up one area. I just don't believe that personally. So on housing?
Homeless housing.
When you said LD, I'm sorry.
BLD,
BLD.
yeah, excuse me, the 300 units that we appropriated for that. But yes, we definitely do need affordable housing. Thank you for bringing that up, Ingrid. I hadn't thought about that, but while I'm on the subject. So I think I would love to get a firm commitment where the county would go in 50-50 on a blind cost of trail construction and design. I think that would be the first stage if this motion fails, and I think by the count it's going to fail. I would love to engage other people who will build it for us and commit to that. I would love to have grants committed. But as of tonight, for this, what we have in front of us, I just can't commit to hundreds of thousands of dollars of blind cost and staff time. And I just can't do that tonight. So for that reason, I will not be supporting the motion either.
Or you will
Consider another motion.
Oh, sure. Well, I'll throw another motion out there. So Ryan, let's call the question on this motion.
So just to be clear, a yes on the motion means not moving forward.
Right.
Am I understanding? Okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
the way it sits, the way it stands.
Because I think
I
you're
just
sort of
went.
against this.
Huh?
You're against moving forward.
I am for not moving forward,
You're for not moving forward.
or I'm not. Yes.
Are you against not moving forward? Thank you. I can't believe I love this.
Motion passes.
Is there
Motion
another-
passes 4-3. Yes by Mayor Pro Tem Willman, no by Counselor Gabuso, yes by Mayor Godus, no by Counselor Dem, no, or yes by Counselor Dem, no by Counselor Stepp, no by Counselor Kaup, yes by Counselor Hershey.
Counselor Kopp, do you have another motion?
Can I make another
Oh, yeah,
motion?
no, absolutely.
Okay. So I guess based on this somewhat confusing conversation, I do get the impression that people would like to see this move forward. It's not a priority under these conditions, correct? Not everyone. Councilor Hershey. So my motion would be that to ask staff to move forward on getting pricing on a design for the trail and possibly cost estimates on the trail construction itself and what that might be. And then also pursuing conversations with potential partners on getting on cost sharing of that trail construction, and then reworking this particularly item number 6 in the memo here. I'll second. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I would support that motion with the caveat that we do the cost, the design cost and an estimate for the trail cost. So we have that in hand, because I think until we have that in hand and can go to partners and say, here's the cost, here's what you're on the hook for.
That was, yeah,
Right.
that was really kind of what
Right.
if you were moving forward tonight, that's what I needed to do, is
And I
be
would
able to
like
know
to-
what I'm working on.
Brian's still here. I would like to add one.
Let's get the motion at the table clear, because this is where things
Okay.
get confusing. is We start talking, we don't get a motion. So your motion is what again?
My
Michelle?
motion is to direct staff to move forward with a concept, just a concept trail design and a rough estimate of what trail construction might be. And then so that we can have a conversation with potential partners, particularly Garfield County, Roaring Fork Alto Volunteers, on sharing the cost of the construction of that trail. And then I would like to add
Hold
one
on,
other.
hold on,
thing.
hold on.
Hold on,
This
so
is the longest
the
motion.
motion just changed again, so I want to make sure I understand. Originally, you said you wanted staff to solicit cost estimates for design of the trail,
Okay.
which is very different from creating a conceptual design, which is actually committing to
All right.
money to do it. So my clarifying question is, you want us to solicit cost
Yeah, let's
estimates
go
for
with that.
design?
Right.
And to the extent that that cost estimate would also include any thoughts on cost of the trail in total to get those.
Right.
And then the third thing, which necessarily follows the other two, is to look to other partners that might help with that.
For the
I would
cost.
probably respectfully suggest that if we get costs on design, we should come back with that first to see if you guys even want to move forward with that, because I don't really want to work up a bunch of partners again into a frenzy and then have you guys say, no, we're not even going to pay for design.
That sounds great.
So we'll
Let's go with
solicit
that.
proposals for design.
We'll take one step at a time.
I think that would be great.
That's
Would
helpful.
you? Yep.
And I did second that. I don't know if you heard that. So I will second the clarification as well.
Okay, so it is
Solicit proposals for design.
solicit proposals for design.
Call the question.
Does that, okay, thanks.
Okay.
Call.
Ryan,
Hang on, guys. There we go.
Motion passes 6-1. Yes by Mayor Pro Tem Wellman, yes by Counselor Russo, yes by Mayor Geddes, yes by Counselor Dem, yes by Counselor Stepp, yes by Counselor Kaup, no by Counselor Hershey.
Could you just say 6-1 and say no by council first?
6-1, no by Hershey.
Oh, I know, I'm just kidding.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
all right.
Take a break and make it smartly.
You know, yeah, do we need a 5-minute break?
Well. Judy more information. This is quick or fast, or-
I don't know. Judy, is it gonna be quick? Okay, come on up. Christian Handy will be glad to
We'll try
know.
to be brief, but something that we definitely want to make sure you're aware of. So every year annually, we enter into a memorandum of understanding with the county and 7 other jurisdictions for senior meal programs. We also enter into the transportation program. We give $30,000 to RAFTA for that. Our cost for the senior meal program typically on average is about $4,900. This year, that is increasing to $51,848. So it's a fairly substantial increase, mostly due to increase in the cost of the meals as well as increased participation. But Judy Martin is here tonight to talk a little bit about the program, so you understand why we're a part of it, and also what is causing such a significant increase in the cost. Our recommendation, if council wants to continue, and I believe all the jurisdictions have signed except for Glenwood Springs, would be to fund the increase, which traditionally I think has come from discretionary. That's right, Deborah. By funded from marijuana tax funds and tobacco tax funds for the program for this year. And then we have some discussions going forward in the 2023 budget on how to address that cost increase into the future.
Hi, and I'm Judy Martin, and I run senior programs for Garfield County through the Department of Human Services. And I think Brian did a really nice job of kind of explaining where things are at. Last year, during the pandemic, we changed our program, and instead of doing congregate meals, we did home delivery as well as grab and go lunches. I'm going to tell you, we serve a population that is over the age of 60, folks who live in senior housing, whether or not they're over the age of 60 or not, and spouses. We had a huge increase because our government said, please stay home, seniors, don't go out. And they took that to heart. And I still have a number of seniors who have not left their home in 24 months. But what we have seen since then is we saw an increase in us having to do deliveries. We did over 6,000 home delivered meals using Traveler to do those that were living in their own homes. And I and my staff, there's 3 of us in my program, doing home deliveries in Glenwood at the 3 senior housings. We went from usually serving between Sunnyside and Chattanooga at CMC. Normally we would do maybe 55 meals at the most. We were up to like 95 because people were staying home, and a lot of them didn't go to the grocery store. There was a lot of restrictions and things to do that. At the same time that was happening, for the first time ever, I had to put my meal contracts out by procurement. For the very first time, Valley View Hospital, who had been doing the programs for over 35 years, said, we don't want to play. They have a right to do that. I'm going to tell you, they have the most amazing staff, and I enjoyed working with them wholeheartedly for the 14 years I've been in this position, and they were great. When we put it out for procurement, we got 1 bid from Sunlight Mountain Resort. And I'm going to tell you that during the pandemic, we would drive to Sunlight to get the meal and bring it back during Midland construction. So that for my staff and I, we would leave at 10 o'clock in the morning, hoping to have the meal down by 11:30. Most days we made it, some days we did not. It depended on how many times we got stopped. It was not the best working solution I've ever seen in my life. It was a little hectic. And then they gave notification to us in December that they would like to end. And they ended that program on the 19th of January because ski season started. And all at once, they have a staff that's really amazing in their kitchen, but it's 1 woman and 1 part-time person, and she's trying to serve everybody at a ski area and do our lunches. It was not a workable solution. We put it out for bid, and starting on February 22nd, we now work with Alan Kokish Inc., which is out of, he's out of Willits. And he also does the senior meals in Eagle County up at Elgin. And when Pickens County chef had back surgery, he also covered for them. So he already knew the rules and regulations for the program and did a really, really nice job about it. But our meal cost at Valley View was $5.50 a meal. We're now paying $12.78. So when I did my grants, which of course are due, I get a funding, my largest funding source is the County Agency on Aging. That grant is due in January. So we were in the process of going, we don't even know who our kitchen's going to be. I used the fee that we had at Sunlight, which was $10.25 a meal, and projected that out. I've been able to secure an additional $36,000 in carryover money from our AAA. But to be honest with you, our food cost is extremely high. And a lot of it just had to do with the timing and the pandemic. and trying to guess how many people would do this or do that and be able to do that. I'm going to tell you that for the seniors, it is, when we will open back up our congregate meal sites, and I would love for you to come on any Tuesday or Friday at our meal sites. They are so happy to be out of their homes and back together again. And so that we've seen an increase in the meal sites. In the last 3 months, we've been doing our Well and Wise exercise classes. And in the past, like when we started them back in September, we were lucky to get 6 people in the class. Barbara just told me that her class for Jerry Fit at that CMC that starts on the 14th, she's got a wait list of 36. So she can only we're only allowed to put 14 at the max in the class. So she'll put 14 in. And so we're gonna have probably like ongoing classes. With that, we're doing a Tai Chi class at Sunnyside that has been going on since September. So we're really trying to get the folks back out and about and active again. What we've noticed is that a lot of our seniors did not exercise a lot during the pandemic and sat down. And so their range of motion and everything has kind of changed. I've been able to secure our Well and Wise funding is totally done and covered by grants, so we're not asking municipalities to play any part in it. The last 2 years, I did not ask municipalities to pay anything for our nutrition program because I was able to do it with grants. My hope is that I will continue to be able to do that, but it's just this year was not, I just haven't been able to pull it all together as fast as I'd like to and be able to do that. So I know I'm asking for a huge increase in dollars, but I can honestly tell you that the seniors and I really would sincerely appreciate your signing the 7-party MOU. And that we'll continue to offer those services to the seniors in the community. Was that fast enough?
All the questions?
Brian, and it might be a Brian question. Does this also include transportation? Do I remember reading that as well?
The agreement does include transportation, and it's referred to in the one we have an IGA also for the travelers service. But what we're talking about tonight is an increase in the senior meals program.
Just the meals for the
There is no
51,000.
increase, in our contribution to RAFTA for the transportation.
RAFTA members, they pay all the fees for the transportation for RAFTA members.
Excellent. I just was trying to remember how that fit together. Yeah.
I believe we're trying to clean that part of it up because that is like super messy from years and years ago.
Okay. That sounds like a city staff. You guys need this for you guys. Totally makes sense. Thank you. That was my question.
Go ahead, Charlie.
I don't have a question. I want to tell you, thank you so much for all the hard work you do. It's a wonderful program. I miss your monthly menus you used to set out activities. I hope you get back to those. I move, we approve. $51,848.
Second. Been moved by Council Wilman, seconded by me. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you for everything you do.
All right back at you. By the way, your son is now in one of our Tai Chi classes. And he's really effective with doing one down.
All right, are we able to get Mr. Boyd on the screen?
I thought we were gonna take a short break.
Yes.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 8:15.
Who's gonna be on the screen?
Steve. Maybe we can go back to
Change the intent of harass.
Right.
But just without property or threatening.
Yeah.
All right, we are back. We're 2 minutes.
Asking the question, Shelley.
Okay.
All right, item number 21, inflation update and employee retention. Mr. Boyd.
Yep, I can take that one. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So I was asked just to make a couple of quick comments on this inflation thing that we're all hearing about. That's going to be the end of our economy and all that kind of stuff. Inflation has spiked. There's no doubt about it. And the reason for that is that the cost of inputs to people that sell things to consumers is going up, and that moves the supply curve to the left. At the same time, we've got a lot of demand because the economy is pretty good. We're in full employment, and that moves the demand curve to the right, both of which increase prices. So this is not going to go away anytime soon, but it will go away. The Fed is going to start tightening rates, and we're not going to have to live like this forever. As you guys recall, last year, we implemented a salary survey or a salary study. And we were in a position where we had the money to do it a little bit early. So we were going to do it in the beginning of January, and we decided to pull that forward to the beginning of August, as I recall. And at the time we decided, let's not take inflation on now. The budget was kind of set and we were giving everybody a bump. Everybody was getting at least 2%. Let's push that into the spring, which is where we are now. So what we're seeing right now for our employees is that everything is going up in cost except their paychecks, right? And if you do the grocery shopping in your household, you know that is in fact happening. To pay for this, most of this is in the general fund, as always when it comes to employees. This is already kind of in the budget. When we set our budget for sales tax in 2022, it was about September. And what we decided to do is take our year-end estimate for 2021 and then apply a 0% growth rate to that effectively. And so at the end of the year, our forecast was, pretty much right on. It was a little bit low. So what actually happened is the 2022 sales tax forecast is a little bit lower than the 2021 actual numbers. And, had we not had some of those things happening, I would have said we probably are going to grow by about 10%. We've grown 10% in sales tax in January. We did the same 10% in February. I kind of expect that's how this year is going to go in terms of sales tax. So if we earn $9 million in sales tax every year in the general fund, 10% of that would more than pay for this. As long as we get up to 7 or 8%, it'll pay for it. We also do always have open positions that we've got to deal with. And, it sucks for the department because everybody else has to work harder, but it's great for me because it's wind at our back, in the budget process. So this isn't surprising to us. We knew that this was coming. And I feel like 5% is meaningful enough to make a difference for employees, but not so much that there's any chance that inflation is going to turn around and we're going to give that back. So that's kind of where we're coming from. With that, I'll shut up and open it up to anybody that has questions or comments or whatever.
Oh,
You don't even look to see if my light is lit up. That's great. Steve, I'm going to say this first of all, before I ask my question. I totally appreciate and respect all of the work that the city staff does. I still have to ask questions.
Sure.
So I just want to be sure that is first said, that whatever I'm asking, it's not intended as any implication of bad feelings about anybody. But so first of all, how do we pay for this in the long term? I mean, I know there's a little bit of discussion of that in the conversations you said, but I'm going to premise this a little bit by just saying, this is a fiscal responsibility of this council, is to look at how are we spending the money, and not just now, not because we can figure it out this year, but long term. So I have two questions. So I'm going to ask them both at the same time. How do we do this long term? And what else, or what are different ways that we can start looking at compensating employees and taking care of them without this instantaneous, we need to give everybody a cost of living increase or a raise today, instead? I mean, is there, what has been done as far as that kind of thing? And that might be a Deborah question to answer too, but I'd first like answer to number one.
Sure.
Two, definitely. Thank you.
So in terms of long-term inflation really is kind of a non-issue. If everything in an economy goes up by 10% in price and everybody's paycheck goes up by 10%, the buying power is the same. And, we should be making an adjustment every year in all of our business lines to make sure that we're increasing that with whatever inflation is. We've been going through that in water and electric, pretty recently. So the only time inflation really becomes a problem is when everything is going up in price, but your paycheck doesn't, or vice versa.
That's not my question. So I
Well-
just want to make sure we're getting to my question.
Okay. Well, so say your
How does
question
the
again, because
city pay for this long term? I mean, it's $1 million January this year. It's another $1 million right now. So we're looking at a $2 million increase to our budget right now, next year, to continue this 5% raise. We're not going to take it away. So where do we find this in our budget with all the other things that we have to pay for?
it's in our revenues. We get in our tax revenues. Right? So as prices come up, our tax revenue goes up, and some of that is pushed onto employees.
And we see that as continuing for year to year to year. We're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's going to be every year. It might be 1%, it might be 6%. I don't know. But every year, yeah, we're going to make an adjustment for inflation just to try to keep everybody's buying power, the same as it is before we went into the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I still feel like we're asking for $2 million now next year that we're going to put in this year. 2 million, 1 million from January, 1 million. And so that'll be a bottom line on our budget. And we're expecting to have the sales tax income next year to cover this additional $2 million to our employee cost budget. And
Yeah, I think our sales.
I want everybody here to be aware of that that's what we're looking at, because we have lots of things on our table. Employees are definitely number one, but we do have a lot of things on our table. So that's something that we need to consider, that this is a long-term budget decision tonight, not a one-time budget decision. And then Deborah, to question two, what else can we do besides these? We need to do something really quick to help retain these employees. I'm just trying to, what else are we?
I mean, and if you give me leave, I will talk a little bit outside of your question.
Okay.
Competition for municipal workers is fierce. Aspen, the city of Aspen last night approved $1.75 million in addition to a 2% COLA they had approved on January 1. We compete with them for sure. And that is occurring throughout the valley. Private sector has been increasing wages as well. I've been given permission by Mr. Beckley to say that what he is providing is significantly above this in wage increases. Christian Henney told me they're giving this year a 7 to 11% increase. So this is happening everywhere. And yes, we try to have a environment at the city that retains people. We try to provide benefits where we can think of them that will be useful. I try to provide a supportive organization that is flexible and where my employees will be happy. If they are having trouble paying for gas to get here, and we even have a program for that where we're activating our van system again. But if they're having trouble buying food and putting gas in their car, I can have the happiest, fuzziest organization in the world, and they will leave for more money if they are struggling. Or if they even could just go make a ton of money someplace else. And the cost to replace them is very significant. So yes, we try to do all those things, Paula, for sure.
I guess what I'm looking for more, not so much that, and that's great. And I understand this appeal. I totally understand it. But what I'm looking for is, what kind of programs can we put in place, like changing the pay increments to say, we're going to do this differently so that there's an opportunity for increased income with and I'm making this up, so I'm just looking for my past history. I know you would do it differently, but what can we do for merit bonuses? What can we do? I'm just looking for other ways that our immediate response isn't, let's go back to council because we need another raise real quick, which we're in an emergency situation. I get that. I would just love to see something that employees have a positive way of staying here, knowing this potential for future income without this overnight agreement to, okay, we're going to increase we're going to give you a cost of living at 5%. And next year it's going up again. So we're going to give you another 7%. And next year you have another problem. We need to give you another. Yeah, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Well, typically, we've always, since I've been here, most years we did between 2 and 3%, right? January and 2020, we did do a 3% on January 1 before COVID. Then we cut everybody's salary by 10%. We gave it back when COVID wasn't so bad. Then we didn't do an increase in 2021 technically until towards the end of the year when we implemented so we did one last year and we did one this year. I will always ask for a salary increase every year for employees. Sometimes it's merit-based, sometimes it's COLA. In a perfect world, I'd be like, I want 5% COLA and I'd love to do a 3% merit on top of that. That is not what we're doing. We're first focusing on the COLA because we kind of merged a little bit of them together this year. So yes, we do merit pay. It's just, that is not what we're doing this year.
So can we just focus on questions at this time? Because I feel like we're having this whole conversation, and I think if there's like just questions people have, if we're done with questions, that's great. We can move into debating the merits, as I said. Do you have a question?
I just have one question.
Sorry, do you have any more questions, Paul?
No, I'm good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Everybody, question is, are you seeking, as I read the memo, a 5% COLA request and a 2.5% pay range?
No, 5% in total. It is essentially all COLA, though for employees, they also like to move through the range. So it is a 5% COLA, but it'll be 2.5 floating up the range and 2.5 moving the range up and 2.5 moving people up in their range.
So I'll make one comment, kind of response to Paul's question. Every year except 2020, our sales tax revenues have increased because the stuff that Steve's talking about, where it costs more to buy goods every year, costs more to go to the restaurants, all those sorts of things. I'm concerned about long-term impacts as well, but I'm going to move that we approve the 5%. Second.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Marco. No. We'll give it to Marco. Further conversations of the motion. Counselor Hershey.
Just briefly, I think, Mr. Mayor, you and I tried to find the light and I hit the wrong button. You and I have worked in the public sector. I don't know anybody else at this table, maybe who has. Carl, I think you're aware what I make and compared to maybe if I was working for you, what I would make. And I think that's important, especially in Colorado and the rules and the laws that we're under, that public sector employees make less. But I think Deborah's point is well taken. We're not competing just with the private sector, which is hard enough. We're competing with Carbondale and Basalt and Aspen and Newcastle and Rifle. And if I live in Parachute or Rifle and I can be a policeman there and not have to travel to Glenwood, or I can work in the electrical department there and I don't have to travel here, or if I can work for Matt's department, I can work for streets there and I don't have to commute and make almost as much or more. We're fighting with them. And I agree with every single thing that Paula just said. And we were just having an argument about money. Where's this money going to come from? And we have other priorities. But one of those priorities, and it's probably if it's not number one, it's certainly in the top 3, are the people that keep the city running. We can spend as much money as we want on trails and parks and police and new police cars and training. But if we don't have the people, what's the point? So I'm going to support this, but I certainly respect and I don't know how Paula's going to vote, but I certainly respect her concerns. Thank you.
And I do have a comment.
Does anybody else? I'll get back to you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that I feel like the system of a community is strongest when people aren't overworked. And when we looked and saw that 13% of our staff, we have positions that aren't filled, that means that our existing staff are compensating for that loss. And it's a detriment to their health and their well-being. And I want to make sure that we do retain that staff. And I think that the way to do it is to make sure that they have the economic support from us that we can offer in this, and it's a very nominal amount. I actually had Deborah send you an article that reinforces what Tony said, and that is that private and public sector, there's a 10% difference in that private sector employees make 10% more than public sector. So this is, for those who are saying, I work in the private sector, I don't get an increase when there's inflation. Yeah, but you historically are making more. There's more opportunity for you to make more. This is our way to support the system and the community that we have, and I will obviously be supporting it.
I have a quick question. Brian, I guess you have a lot of employees. Have you lost any employees in out of the last 90 days to people who said, I'm going to work somewhere else for higher pay?
Yes, we've had 2 full-time staff and 4 part-time staff. We do exit interviews with most of our employees, so that is one of the major reasons.
Thanks, Brian.
So that was 6 people.
Brian, can I ask you too then, and what's the impact to your department when you lose staff?
We're already, like everyone else, we're already, struggling short staff. So yeah, it's pretty detrimental.
First of all, I want to say I'm going to support this amendment because that's not what my point was earlier. My point is that we really look at these questions of budget questions for what's necessary. We are fiscally responsible for this. And I did not mean to grill Deborah. And I know I was sounding that way because that's my bad tone of standing on a stump and getting ready to be self-righteous. And that's not meant at all, Deborah. I totally appreciate what you're doing. I'm just saying, what do we do? And making sure that we are all looking at this for our level of fiscal responsibility and not just bringing it to the table and saying yes, but asking the right questions and getting the right answers. And that's what I'm looking for. I totally believe that we need to take care of our staff. I think it's very important. And I think it's very important that we keep the staff we have. And I'm sorry, Brian, that you've gone through missing, and I'm sure I could talk to other people as well. I know Chief Darris has had a hard time filling in these roles here in our town. So I just want to be sure that it's clear that it's not a question of, do they deserve it? It's a question of, are we acting responsible in our role of making sure to understand all the parameters of what this could mean?
Counselor Stepp, I just want to say something real quick before I call the question. I think when you ask that question and say, I just want to make sure, we've all read the packet, we understand what this is, and we've had our questions answered. So I'm not taking offense, but I want you to know that at least I understand this. I understand the long-term implications. I understand this. I don't need to have it be brought forth, and I get it. And so I think that, in the future, if we can ask the questions without saying, I just want all of you guys to know, because we do know, and we understand what we're taking a vote on. And I think that is our responsibility. So I just want to let the public know that I've read the packet and I know what's going on. So Ryan's called the question.
Is Brian yes or no?
It's the one you never pressed.
Oh, the one.
Well played.
I found it.
Tony got it right this time. It's unanimous.
Including
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Steve, thank you for being here and doing this.
And thank you, all of our employees.
Yes.
And Brian's buying me lunch.
Number 22, amending municipal court provisions.
All right, I get to do the really exciting stuff.
This is exciting.
It is kind of exciting. Yeah, no, anyway, in all honesty, this is a variety of cleanup in Title 120, including discon, harassment, minor in possession. These changes were both requested by and reviewed by the municipal judge, the prosecutor, and the police chief. They're necessary, as my note says, to ensure both compliance with state statute as well as cleaning up the elements of the offenses to make it easier to prosecute. And with that, I hopefully don't have any questions, because
Go ahead, Shelley.
I'd like to move that we approve ordinance
It
20.
is a public hearing.
Oh, 20.
Is there any
Second.
questions for
Motion
staff?
first.
Seeing none, I'll open up for public hearing. Anybody from the public to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the item for public hearing and I'll bring it back for a motion. Counselor Cobb.
I will move that we approve ordinance 2022-13, amending municipal court provisions.
Moved by Counselor Cobb, second by Counselor Wuso. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I just found the yes
Just, okay, so, okay. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it passed unanimously.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes.
All right, item number 23, ordinance 2022-14, financing of the Electric Operations Center.
Yeah, this is another really interesting one. But let me, by way of background, say a couple of meetings ago, you approved moving forward with the Electric Operations Center, subject to us being able to secure appropriate financing for it. We did do that through a competitive process of soliciting various lenders and looked at two possible routes to go with that. One was to issue revenue bonds out of the electric department. The other one was to do the type of instrument you see in front of you, which is a COP or a leaseback. It's kind of used interchangeably. In looking at the type of project, this is the kind of project that a COP is particularly well suited for. It's a discrete building. It's a singular asset. It works well in that format. Both revenue bonds out of the electric department or COPs are not subject to TABOR. Either of those forms, we wouldn't have been going to vote on this particular instrument. Really thinking about it, the interest rates were the same. All the basic terms were the same. The one advantage to going with the COP versus the revenue bond right now is it does preserve our ability in the electric fund. If something else comes up that we do want to issue revenue bonds for, we're in a good position to do that. I think that finance as well as Matt is comfortable, regardless of what the utility levels are, rate levels are, that we're comfortable being able to manage this debt service and move this project forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, and we're recommending approval.
Charlie.
I have one question. I know I should find it there, and I tried to actually read this last night.
Right, I'm sorry.
And after several days of trial, so it was interesting reading. What's the interest rate? I never did figure out that.
I believe.
352.
Thank you. I was gonna say it's 352.
What is it?
352.
That's
Three
good.
five two?
Yeah.
352.
Yeah, and which is another reason why we got to the packet a little bit late, is we were working on this on Sunday, trying to nail this down and hit our lock deadline. As you may have noticed, interest rates are a bit volatile in the market today compared to what they have been.
Ingrid.
This is the funniest question, but what happens if a municipality fails to, like, they default on their loan? Like, you can't come repossess the electric
Actually,
building?
you can. That's kind of the point of this.
Okay.
It's kind of an interesting instrument in that it is, and you're gonna hate me in just about 10 seconds, okay? So because it's a lease back, essentially what that means is that we own the property, we execute a site lease, which you saw, to Alpine Bank, who's a great local lender who is doing this project with us. They pay us a lump sum for that site lease. We use that money to build a building. But they have the site lease, so they can repossess the site lease. Our payments are subject to annual appropriation, so we could non-appropriate. If we do, they take over the building and they find somebody else to use it. So that's and that's why I said this particular instrument is, you can't really use it for a road because that doesn't work. But something discrete like this, it makes a lot of sense. Other projects that we've done similarly or been done similarly in town. The pool addition to the community center we did with Alpine Bank in exactly the same way. The jail was built with COPs, and I believe the county annex building was purchased with COPs and built with COPs as well. So it's a fairly common for like a vertical structure like that. It's as a financing mechanism.
Good question, Charlie.
No. Oh, wait,
Motion?
we got public hearing. I was gonna make a motion.
Okay. If there's no more question, I'll turn it over to the public for the public hearing. Alyssa, do we have anybody online? Okay, just just jump out. Every once in a while, I just run through it. All right, seeing no public comment, anybody wanting public comment from the public, we'll close the public hearing. We'll bring it back now for a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 2214, financing electric operations center.
Second. The move by Council Wilman, seconded by myself. Ryan, let's call the question.
That's what we're missing one.
I'm working on it.
It's unanimous.
All right,
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Deborah, anything?
Yes. We are going to be going on May 11th, 12th, and 13th to lobby NDC, US DOT for the RAISE grant, which our gap in the 27th Street underpasses is going to be going into, as well as a multimodal expansion of RAFTA. And then also we're going to be submitting somewhere between a $25 and $30 million rural surface transportation grant for Southbridge this summer. So it's an excellent time in May to do both of those things. And I think we're also going to try to hit up the Bureau of Land Management while we are there as well in DC. I think it'll be Carl, I, and Jonathan, but we would like to take another one of you with us. And I thought I would leave it up to you guys to decide who will do that, because I think it's good to have another person trained up for these kind of things.
I was going to say, may I ask something? Is the BLM?
Yeah, as long as
about the
you
mine?
push the
Oh,
thing.
God. Is the BLM about the mine?
Yes, the Bureau of Land Management is about the mine.
Whose board is that in?
Ingrid's.
Well, there you go.
Do we need a motion, or are we just okay? I'll second the motion.
Okay, we will start working on those details as soon as the raise grants are done.
Well, there's an Irish pub. There's a cafe. There's a cafe called the Westway. that-
Yeah, there's a series of locations that Jonathan's no longer allowed in. But. Was that it?
That is it for me. Thank you very much.
Okay.
A couple of things I just wanted to note tonight. One is you guys got the email, and a lot of you knew about it, that the RISD got the final decree. We'll have a little bit more information and kind of, recentering ourselves around that, because Shelley in her first tour of duty, I think, was here when that started, but
It's been a
long time. It's been 9 years. I want to, say thank you to that team, Mark Hamilton and his team, for shepherding that through. That was really great. The other one, as an attorney, I just want to acknowledge the fact that today was really pretty historic in the US Senate, and that Justice Jackson was confirmed as the first Black woman on the US Supreme Court. And that is remarkable and amazing. And like I said, as an attorney, I just wanted to acknowledge that as a significant day in our history.
All right, any incoming, outgoing correspondence? Yeah, go ahead, Charlie. Thank you.
I talked about this in the work session, just so that it's a public meeting as well. This legislative session, House Bill 22-1024 was passed. It imposes restrictions or requirements that would remove from five home rule municipalities in the state the ability to tax use tax in certain public institutions. In the issue from CML, this was brought to my attention by the CML director, the issue that CML is working on, and they use the letter of the packet as their letter to the governor, is to veto this, because it isn't so much this particular tax what the issue is, it's infringing on home rule's ability to determine who we tax, how we tax it, in what fashion. There have been several court cases that are cited in the letter that have been favorable to municipalities where they can't, legislature cannot do that under the Colorado Constitution. However, as we know, courts can change. Luckily, we have a new Supreme Court justice but they can change and so that's the concern. So I would ask that we ask our city attorney in his spare time to send a letter, similar letter to the governor encouraging him to veto this and when asked for, I would so move.
I'll second that. It's been moved by Charlie, seconded by myself. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. If time allows, Counselor Handlin.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
It's stopping. I would make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.